he seeing right now?
He's seeing nothing.
Oh, he's just staring at a blank screen.
No, he sees us.
Oh,
But he can't see the chickens, I don't think.
oh.
He actually, I think he could actually. Hey Dan, we can hear you now. Yeah, and we're live now. We're like fully live. And now we can hear you. That I don't know how to do this whole YouTube thing. But you can probably barely hear me, but you can probably hear Dan.
Why would he hear me more than
Because
you?
I don't think he can hear this. As he can
Oh,
hear that though.
so am I coming across okay? Oh, good. Thanks.
Oh wow! Out of the gate.
Yeah, jeez.
So what I wanted to talk to Dan
How
about.
close does this have to be to me? Can it be down here?
Like here's good.
Really?
Yeah, you gotta kiss it. That's what it is in the biz.
Okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
Don't be shy.
I'm new at this. Go ahead.
We wanted to talk. I asked you because you'd been telling me for years that you want to write a book called "My Summer of
Oh,
Fundamentalism,"
yes.
right?
Yes.
And you've been formulating and talking about this book for many, many
Oh, yes.
years.
It's all here and it's all up here.
But you've never gotten around
No,
to
I
it.
probably never will.
And you probably never will? Like, actually never?
There's a few chapters here and there, a few things I write now and again, but no.
You actually write? Do you write them? Have you heard
Yeah.
about this, Dan? His book that.
My Summer of Fundamentalism, 1969. It's from, it's my 3 months of serious, as I was a first, drug addict, hippie, hitchhiking around the country. 16, didn't know what I was doing, and 17 came and I stumbled out of the gutter and met the Jesus people and who were ardent fundamentalists, Bible believing fundamentalists, Holy Spirit filled, tongue speaking. And for 3 months, I was able to, keep that up. I mean, that was I was raised Sicilian Roman Catholic and half my life by my Sicilian grandparents, steeped in a kind of mystical superstition, It's more like the Middle Ages than when you think of the Catholic Church now, what the kind of Catholicism they were involved with. So that's what I came out of. Then I, of course, had a brief stint with atheism in high school, in between trips to rehab drug addiction and then off to Jesus. So anyway, it was a very interesting time of my life. I managed to make
You're
it
getting
up.
ahead of yourself, though.
Okay.
Don't get into all that
Okay,
quite yet.
you ask me a question and I'll answer it then.
So, I also am curious, Dan Oudshoorn. When you met, tell us about how you met Dan, because this relationship's important to how this whole thing's gonna play out.
Yeah.
Farmers only.
Curious, just experimenting. Yeah. Hmm.
Wait, before you move on, I'm curious because you said a similar thing last time when I asked you about how you met Dan, but he wasn't here. And I've been thinking about it. What do you mean by that? Like, people were using, or this is before people used like live chatting for some sort of capitalist human gain, or how? Explain that. I'm confused about what you mean by that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he every once in a while he puts something on Facebook, and that's where I'll contact him. I might be in Eugene coming up, maybe, occasionally I've phoned him, but it's been sparse. So I'm not sure what he's up to. Mhm. I do. I read them all.
Um, so how do you feel like when you were?
Shouldn't you have had these questions prepared ahead of time?
They're all prepared. I've been meditating on all of this for years, just to get you pinned down here to interrogate you
Let me
about your
just
book.
let me just ask you. I'm not convinced that this is like something he's doing because I've fallen into serious mental derangement, and he's pretending like, oh, you have all these friends and everybody's listening. But you're really important now, Dan. Come over to my little trailer, and is that what's going on here? Is this like some senior,
Oh,
you
like
know,
make you to make you feel good.
Nobody really. I mean, where's this going?
If the ended.
I'm the deranged.
Oh, kitty cat.
My dementia is my. No, this is his. I'm out here in this trailer in the woods with this guy who says we're gonna stream and have this talk, and there's goats outside and chickens and you know, and it's just going out into the noosphere, the Sardinian noosphere. Where's this going? That's what, or are we just three men assuming that boy somebody's going to want to hear this, and we're just casting this flotsam out onto the great plastic island of garbage in the floating around.
Yeah, most likely the last thing that you said, but that's not important. Okay, the important thing is to get this down on paper.
That's important.
Before Dan goes to dirt. So.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
No. Okay, but let me ask you a question.
Can't we get two microphones?
I did, but I can't. It doesn't work anymore. Okay, so tell me the like. Yeah, can we? Hey, this Corona's still on.
A little love trailer.
Are you vaccinated? Tell me the.
You're gonna ask me if I had a
Okay, shut up for a second.
Vasectomy.
This happened in the 70s,
What happened?
60s. Your summer of
Right on the cusp
fundamentalism.
of 69, 70. Yeah.
Okay, so explain to me like the political, like religious climate of that time, because I know it had to do with like there was like a lot of talk about aliens and the rapture and like great planet Earth and all that. Tell me firsthand, what was it like?
So you want me to describe Christianity at that point, as I encountered
Just
it?
but there was a lot of spiritual things going on in the
There was a lot
zeitgeist.
of ferment, a lot of foment.
What is foment?
foment. It was a tumultuous time. A lot of people.
You don't have to make up words just to sound smart.
I just got accused of that on Facebook. I'm in a bit of a discussion with David Bentley Hart's brother, who is calling me I don't know how to write. I'm garbage. It's kind of interesting.
Okay, you have some sharp words about our good friend. Who's the lobster guy?
Oh, you don't mean David Foster Wallace?
No. Dan. Now who's the lobster guy? Jordan Peterson.
Norm Peterson.
You've got strong opinions about him. How do you feel about that guy that he just said?
David Bentley Hart?
Yeah, DBH. No, DBH. Well, okay. Continue. The 60s.
I just want to say, I mean, far be it from me to be sticking up for David, whatever is going on with him, I'm not. See, this is the problem with this. I don't know where this is going out to, but I'm not going to be applying for a job anywhere where this will matter. So,
No.
and in retrospect, smoking a bowl of Jesus OG and a couple shots of whiskey and taking a handful of mushrooms before I came over here may not have been the best preparation for answering this. But I was watching a.
Are you?
I can't read much of
You remember the
Hart's.
question?
I can't read much of Hart's stuff.
We'll move on from heart.
It's difficult to read, but I watched an interview with him. I'm very interested in the Advaita Vedanta. He is also, as it turns out, and I really liked what he had to say about that. And his engagement with what we often call Hinduism interests me very much, more so than his engagement with Christianity in a sense. Although I very much do, as Christianities and Christendom goes, Eastern Orthodoxy, I'm not dissing that, but in terms of classical Christianity, if you're looking for something classical and all that goes along with that, for better or worse, Orthodoxy could be a good choice for you.
Okay, but
Oh, what's the question?
the 60s,
Oh, the 60s.
the climate.
It's kind of hard to describe. I mean, it just seemed like there was a bus full of cultists every 15 minutes pulling up.
Right.
There was the children of God. There was
Right, what happened though?
God's children. There
why
was
all of a
Christ's
sudden-
brides. There was
Why all of a sudden was that happening?
well, it's a mixture of capitalism,
Really?
post World War II, existential angst, a lot of young white privileged people. Can you hear me okay, Dan? Because he keeps pointing the microphone into my mouth.
I just
With too much time on our hands, a lot of traumatized. I mean, it was really a screwed up culture in society. I mean, really bad, traumatized. The war in Vietnam is going on then. The country was transitioning from this heroic status of the saviors of the free world to, oppressive colonial power, murdering people in the Middle East. So, this.
in the Middle East in the
I'm
60s?
sorry, in the Southeast Asia. So, I'm just I'm like 12 years old, 13, as I'm starting to think about this stuff. Sadly, I'm already drinking a bit, so my memory
At 12?
of all these things.
Oh yeah, you're smoking that young too, weren't
I'm
you?
a bit, I had a bit of issues that I was struggling with. So,
So how many other people had that kind of already built up trauma like coming into that? Was it everybody or just you? And did that play a part into like the whole like cult fanatic thing around that time?
well, it was a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah.
So, you look at the cover of Life magazine. There wasn't any internet then, but TV. These are the subjects that are being talked about. Change. The old, the tip. It's everything from what's the show? Fiddler on the Roof. I mean, he's the old Jewish guy. He's got 4 daughters, and each one is marrying something that one's marrying a Marxist revolutionary, another one's marrying a Protestant. All these things are challenging Tevye. Well, this was going on. Everything was being challenged. Black people were saying, "Hey, we're moving, we're rising up." So a lot of things were happening. People avoiding the war, and I'm just a kid drinking a little too much, and a bus drive. And I mean, I'd been gone from home. By this time I was an addict, and I was in pretty bad shape, and I'd come back to a small town that I'd lived in for a while, and got of the buses that came by, I'm glad that I jumped on that particular bus, which was the Jesus people. I'm still friends with some of these people. Of the cults and various bad expressions of Christianity and other religions, because it wasn't just Christianity. I mean, there was a lot of this. A lot of various westernized, marketable versions of Hinduism and Taoism, all showing up with their building all kinds of ashrams. So you had a lot of choices back then, a lot of competition. I'm glad that I kind of fell in with the group that I did for now. No. Well,
There's some of them
yeah,
both, right?
some of them are living on compounds in Idaho. That's true. And I'd say I'd say some people went that route. And I remember when that happened around the time of Reagan. So some went alt right, some kind of gave up. Many kind of gave up and went off to some other kind of cult religion. It might have been Reaganism, but it also might have been just kind of agnostic. Some just went into business. I'm just, I'm going to start making money. Some this was about the time cocaine was going to start becoming a big thing. So, and not many were choosing classical Christianity, mainline Christianity. But that would come later as this movement. I think it was a very interesting movement. Even a spiritual movement, as people I think were really responding something, and I think there may have been some real possibilities there for real transformation and change that unfortunately, like most of those things, got strangled in the crib, and it sounds a little bit negative, but very quickly, and we discussed these things very quickly. The whole movement, and I can remember this happening. The mainline churches were very suspicious of what we were doing. They were always even coming down to condemn us or to get us. And Calvary Chapel
Before
an
we,
example of that.
okay, before we get there, I'm curious, Dan Oudshoorn, do you have any?
Let's get this name down because
We'll call him Dan
is that a
O, and you'll be
pseudonym?
Dan.
Is he trying to hide
No,
from
but don't
his
don't tell
colonial
don't
Dutch
tell them the real
history?
name. We can't dox Dan Oudshoorn on live stream. Um, Dan Oudshoorn though. Do you have any? I'm really interested in that era, like the '60s, with like the Children of God and all these different cults and stuff. But it's fascinating. I mean, this is like the birthplace of Calvary, right?
Yeah.
The one I know. Do you have any other insights into like what created that kind of atmosphere for all these cults? Yeah, yeah. You were dead. I was dead too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nah, I don't think so.
So there's these splinter wing groups of Christianity that you fell into one of them,
Mm-hmm.
but then you're talking about like there's the mainstream that's coming against you. So what's the mainstream look like back then?
Back then, it would have been your average uh, various Presbyterian churches. Even though I got invited, so here I am, like 17, and I read through the Bible one time. I've been a born again Christian for 3 weeks, and I'm invited to the Seventh Day Adventist Church youth group to speak. So that kind of thing, they were trying to. Even the Seventh Day Adventists were trying to co-opt. I think a lot of these churches were kind of dead, stagnant, and they saw a lot of life and energy, and maybe a lot of young, attractive women, and maybe, you know, who knows what all their motives were, but and maybe there was some good intentions in there as well. Let's try to bring some light back into our kind of dying things. But I sensed that that's part of what was going on. So I was there. What happened there, though, is I got converted to one night by a very attractive young woman. They were vegetarians. She convinced me to become a vegetarian. She convinced me to become a vegetarian. So Seventh Day Adventists are vegetarians, and the same thing
All of
happened.
them?
The same thing. That's one of their doctrines.
Is that right? I didn't know.
The same thing happened to my son.
Oh.
Now I made it about less than a week, at that time. My son didn't even make it one whole day. But and what took it, none of my opinions about vegetarianism changed. It was the backlash from the Christians that somehow this they saw this as so threatening. It's if you're a vegetarian, that was very much associated with what they called Eastern religion, you know, and clearly Acts says we're in a pretty low level reading. We're supposed to eat all the animals, So how dare I? I mean, it's really like a sinful. I was sinning by not eating meat. You know, it's hard to understand how that would be, but that was an example. So they were trying to co-opt me, and it kind of worked. I never went back to the church again, but I did maintain some friends at the Seventh Day Adventist Church, but the religion didn't interest me at all. So that denomination.
What was it called again? The bus?
No, Seventh Day Adventist.
Oh yeah, but that was your yeah. That was the girl that she was a Seventh Day Adventist.
Yes.
But you got on a bus.
Well, it wasn't an actual. That was a metaphorical bus. There were lots of buses.
It wasn't a literal bus?
No, a friend drove me. So I had shot up some heroin mixed with some ketamine, and I was in very bad shape. And my friend brought me over. He had become a Christian, and so he picked me up, and I'm tweaking out at the park, and he's trying to witness to me. I'm going to take you to the house of Ruth, and we're going to talk to Jesus. I had no idea. I mean, whatever I gleaned from my Roman Catholicism and / because I also hung around Jews and we had some Jewish connections. So, I didn't even know what he was. I couldn't quite understand. We didn't talk about Jesus that way in a Catholic, household. We didn't sit around talking about Jesus. Yeah. So I couldn't even understand, besides being stoned and very sick and I was vomiting. So he opens the door. I fall out into the gutter. I have puke all over me, and a guy named Michael Gregory, who has become a Facebook friend, comes up to me, and he's saying, I'm going to give you the good news of the gospel, whatever. And I was not in a position at that point to say, no, I'm good. I'm doing well. I had to admit there may be some aspects of my life that could use some improvement. I did not have a big, profound, which was the cachet and the marketability of that movement, having a big testimony. I was stoned and now I was straight. I was this and that. And my leg got longer and I never could work up a good testimony.
But what faction was this guy from?
Which guy? This is the Jesus people. This would have been called the Jesus People Army of America.
But the Jesus people, they're not into like healing. Yeah. Like leg lengthening and all that?
They were into, and also, so you have the nationwide movement, but then it kind of worked itself out in each locality. The locality I was at was this small town over here next to the Indian reservation in Yakima, and this is a place populated by Dust Bowl Oklahomans, Georgia Tar Heels, all of this kind of, white trash, underclass, working class, and all the religion, the Nazarenes, all the people that they brought with them up there. By the way, I met a lot of Nazarenes since then. So healing tent, every other weekend there's a tent revival. I mean, I haven't even seen one of those in 30 years. Came to town, evangelists. There was a little bit of TV evangelism back there. So in places like that, there was already a foment going on. And sometimes,
what's foment mean again?
Foment, think of it as the bubbling and percolation on the top of brewing beer or something like that. It's fermenting and rising up and, coming to fruition. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, I might go off to see some old time, like there was this old time evangelist named Lucky Hep, and he was kind of creepy and had his hands on the young girls and this kind of business. But 3 days later, I might be over with the Seventh-day Adventists. Then I'll be leafleting a Catholic church parking lot with leaflets that tell them they're all going to hell, the Pope is the beast, and they need to flee.
Oh, I was going to ask you, who's the guy that started evangelizing to you? Michael something? Mike Gregory. In their presentation, did it have like tracts, or like was it like a hell thing, or was it what?
There was no, as near as I can remember. I should ask Mike about this a bit. Well, our relationship, I don't think he made it as long as I did. I made it the whole summer. I don't think he made it to the end of summer, but for a while we were there together, and he was my elder. And no, it was mostly good news. It's all, you're not going to need drugs anymore because all your problems are going to be healed. Everything's going away. You don't have to worry about anything anymore. Seek the kingdom of God. Everything else will be added unto you. You don't have to worry about money, school, jobs. And in any event, Jesus will be back in months. So by the end of September, maybe October at the latest. And so you were just in this heightened state all the time. And I mean, I have friends that are still in that state. They're still, now it's Jim Baker out of prison hawking, apocalyptic survival kits, but it's still that same emotional state. So Mike didn't make it all the way till then. And then actually, he became quite antagonistic to Christianity. And then he became my persecutor. So he went to work for me. So I was working at a landscaping company, and he kind of worked under me. And and he would tease me, and he would say terrible, horrible things about Jesus. He would swear because he was trying to. So this is the guy that only months before had led me to Jesus was now a stone cold atheist.
It's like Paul, but in reverse.
In reverse. So when I was trying to hold on to my faith, so that was one aspect of the winnowing away of my faith. I mean, the guy that led me here can't even, But I white knuckled it through the whole summer.
Dan O, I have a question.
I want to hear Dan O's testimony of his. Yeah.
Oh, okay. He's got a question for you, and then I have a question for Dan O. Chick tracks.
Oh, God.
He's trapped you.
I give him this. Pauline politics. That's.
He didn't give you that option, Dan.
Is there any possible way David Bentley Hart might hear this? Because I don't want to get, I don't want, orthodoxy bad.
No, there's
I mean, they're all tied up.
0% chance.
They're all tied up with Putin now. They got a big, this is getting ugly over there. So.
But
he's talking about how he may be kicked out from the church. I think he's taken a radical in the best sense of the word. I think he's maybe moving in a more radical direction that might put him on the outs. I don't know if I'm
okay. We're not.
qualified to say that, but
I'm more interested in your story, but Dan O, that he didn't, and then he won't. But the question that I had to ask is exactly along these lines. Like in my growing up in the Calvary Church, it's like they rescued a lot of people from drugs. It was like one of their things, right? In your experience, how helpful is like religion or different kinds of religion at helping people get out of drugs? Well, I mean, yeah, just explain the whole thing, Well, like, okay, so our pastor over here, like a lot of our staff at my church down here, they're all former drug addicts, and they would say, it ruined my life and all this stuff, and Jesus saved me from that. What do you think about all that? But is it helpful? Like, is religion is it a good way to get people out of that, or is it just another thing?
Okay, so at some point, somebody from Jonathan's church shows up and says, "I've got the answer to all of that. It's right here in this tract." How helpful do you think that is? To the suffering, to me as the suffering, to me laying in the gutter, to me laying in the gutter. Mm-hmm. Could I get that doctor's name, by the way?
So you y- you have these experiences, and then you get sucked into this. Would you call it a cult, or would you call it something else?
I just wrote this, so, and I think I wrote it to Dan once too. But as we used to say in linguistics, about what's a dialect and what's a language, and they used to say a dialect is a language without an army and a navy, right? It's the same way, a cult is a religion without an army and a navy. So we were, I'd say we there were,
Okay, let me hold that.
and for Roman Catholics, we didn't use that word. We used the word cult a lot in regular parlance, whereas in the culture at the time, and regular secular culture, that's just a more common word. So it's not necessarily has a negative. Like you would say, "Oh, I belong to the cult of Saint Barbara, and we're going off to do such and such and pray for people with breast cancer or something." So that's not necessarily a negative thing, and I don't necessarily always look at it as a negative thing. At that time, though, the word cult was negative. Kids would go off and jump on the bus, and then their parents would hire deprogrammers to kidnap them back and get them back into mainstream American capitalist, empire. So my parents didn't care enough to hire kidnappers. But anyway, so this is what's going on. So what was the original question?
Well, okay, so
I think
in
another mushroom just kicked in. I'm not.
in your summer of fundamentalism, this was this it? The fundamentalist part of that summer?
Yeah, I was an ardent fundamentalist. I'd read a Bible verse. Like, I was put. We went off to Boise to do an evangelistic movement. So here I am. No, I was put in charge of a four-person witness hit team. We were called or something. And I had three young women who were,
Well, okay, so why did you get like a position already in this?
well, for one, I'd read through the I read through the Bible.
What'd you say, Dan? Oh,
Uh, it's good that you asked that because all of three of those women had been Christians longer than me, had been born again longer than me. I did read through the Bible once, very quickly, and some had and some hadn't. But really,
in the summer or before?
no, right? I mean, I just sat down and said, okay, if I'm gonna do this thing, this seems to be what you need to know. If you're gonna wield any power here, you better start reading this book and start throwing that around. So I got through that very quick, and I had a penis, and at that point, the Jesus people, although they made a lot of breakthroughs in womanist and feminist ideas, they were still pretty hierarchical. Although one of the main leaders was Linda Meisner. Several main leaders were women who just recently liked the Facebook post of mine. I mean, she's one of the, you could look her up on Facebook.
Are you trying to say some of your best friends are women?
No, she wasn't. She was never a particular friend. So I mean, it's a mixed experience with the group. So I was put in charge because I was male, and so I at this point I've been born again maybe a month.
And did that strike you as weird, or is that just normal?
Well, nothing struck me as normal. Probably because I was already so screwed up. I didn't have some kind of normal that I was always, you know, comparing everything to. I was just trying to survive day to day, moment to moment.
So they put you in charge of evangelism hit squad.
Of evangelism on the streets of Boise, Idaho. Serious Protestant, you know,
I thought your summer of fundamentalism was in California, or is that just my assumption?
No, it was. I mean, it was all over. We were traveling evangelists, you know. So we were going around, and so what was remarkable about this is, so we get up, you know, we pray in the morning, you know, and I got my little team together, and I'm trying to, I have no idea what I'm doing, what I'm supposed to be doing, but anyway, I'm leading them out. We walk down the streets of Boise, and this German Shepherd gets hit by a car. Right.
Wait, this is the end, though.
No, this is the beginning. Right at the beginning of my. So I've been born again about a month.
Oh, but in my mind, as this conversation went, I thought this was the end of it.
I would say this began some serious questioning.
Oh, okay.
The dog gets hit, and we had just read that morning, "Pray anything in my name, and your Father will do it for you." And man, there's nothing like a fundamentalist likes, you know. So we ran over, and I said, "Team, you know, this is here. You know, this didn't happen by accident. This is here to manifest the grace and the miracles of God." So in a crowd, you know, the dog is screaming, "Oh, it's ugly." Intestines it's just an ugly, horrible scene. The dog is, and people are gathering. What should we do? They're calling the police. And I'm, you know, we're going to raise this dog up from the dead. So we gather on.
It wasn't dead, though.
It was dying. We're going to heal this dog. So we're praying, we're carrying on. The dog's not getting any better.
Quick.
Stuff the intestines back in, take up a collection, and call it a, you know. So the dog's getting worse, and I'm praying harder. I'm getting them to, you know, I'm trying to reach for other Bible. I'm trying to quote the Bible to God. What is, you know, things, it's not.
So what's going on in your head?
The dog dies, which is, thank God, the dog dies. In my team, I think this eroded some of my, you know, some of the patriarchal power that I might have had. I think that lessened some of that. I mean, we had to keep going, you know, it's 8:30 in the morning. This is how you start your day. A dead dog you could not raise from the dead. So it wasn't, you know, I mean, it was, so I was.
Now, is this the start of it, or is this like a week in or a day in or what?
This is at the start. Wow. So, I mean, I carried on, but this was just, you know, how you, like, you'll read the Bible, it says, like, and Mary harbored this in her heart, you know, and thought about these things. This is something that harbored another little problem that I was going to have to, you know, a dead dog here, you know, a murdered child there, Dostoevsky here, and next thing you know, you got a full-blown existential crisis on your hands.
So. It's funny, though, because, like, in my experience, when I'm praying for somebody to be healed or something, you always have to, like, make a little stipulation. Will we pray for this? But if it's not your will, we pray for the doctors or whatever it is. Was that kind of thing happening?
Absolutely. Yeah, because
But towards the beginning, you're like, God's going to do it. And then towards the end, you're like, well.
That was like theology, you know, 101 then. 99 was, or 100 was, oh, no, you ask anything and it's done. Yeah. Well, when it's not done, now you got to go, why wasn't it done? And I mean, you know, we had discussions about these things, and it usually comes down to, I mean, you ask, you know, if you go to Israel today and ask a lot of Jews, why did the Holocaust happen? It's because we were unfaithful. That was God's punishment. So it was all our fault. And, you know, it was easy for me to go, it's probably my fault. I'm not, you know, I didn't have enough faith. I may have engaged in onanism earlier that day. You know, these three girls, you know.
Does Dan know what onanism is? It's not that kind of show, Dan O.
This is not Ricky Gervaisi. This is or Gervais.
No,
or whatever.
hold it.
What?
I gotta hold it.
So anyway, this is, you know, this began a serious kind of, which ultimately led me to Alfred North Whitehead, who had the answers to all of this. So anyway.
Wait, what's that? What's that mean?
If somebody would have handed me Process in Reality back then, that might have done me some good. I'm not sure. And actually, if somebody would have handed me the, you know, some Upanishads, that might have done me some better good too. But anyway.
What does Dan O think about process theology? Oh, he hasn't. Dan's always talking about it. He just never stops. Should he?
I I don't know that I'd want to tell people what they should be reading. I think people will, depends on what kind of questions he's asking, where he wants, which is my question. So, where where are you now these days? What I mean, I have my sort of strugglings and my universe of whatever, and I have my perfect utopia political vision up here, out of which I criticize everything else. But what's yours? Where are you at these days? Why can't I hold the microphone? Is this like a power kind of a?
You're just bad at holding it. That's all.
I mean, if I had, well, in terms of like if you were to ask me what is my sort of utopian position, I would say it's some sort of anarchist, Jesus freak, communo, uh, you know, string about 12 things together with all kinds of, and this would be my, you know, ecumenical, you know, sort of community, holistic, whatever, attack a whole, that would be something I would say. But I mean, I'm not moving to Idaho for that. But if I had to try to describe something that I thought was worthwhile, life giving, what would a flourishing, life giving community look like? That's the kind of things I would be talking about. That would be the sort of lampposts under which we might gather. What are those lamppost lights for you? And I hand the microphone back to you, the moderator. What are your any political spiritual commitments, movements, ideas, unctions? Uh, Also, remind me. I want to ask you. I started watching the series Vikings. Is it the Vikings or Vikings? And they're kind of interesting. And I think you may. I think you may know something about Vikings. So I want to ask you about Vikings later on. So I just want to put that in before I forget about it. Mm-hmm. Amen. Yeah.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm. 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 Okay, subscribers, and if you want to donate, if you want to send money, uh, I don't know that this is the message that we're going to build a megachurch on, but It's a tiny bubble of hope that immediately gets strangled by despair and evil. Yeah. Okay.
You heard it here first, folks. Um,
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Remind me, what happened to those Black Panther movement? How did that bubble of hope work out?
get your drink
And so was Jesus, right?
Well,
I mean,
Paul.
I mean, Paul's writing about
Same thing. Yeah, I mean, any religion involved in your life at all, there, Dano?
religion. You got to be careful saying, what words you're this.
Well, that was part of your question, right? You're like, you asked him, you got this whole Jesus anarchy thing and all that. Like, well, what about for Dano?
Well,
Do you have it?
what's your ideal utopia? You have any of that? That's, you know, Odin or Onan?
Odinism.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
No, I think I didn't really hear.
Okay,
But
perfect.
maybe he said all he wants to say about that at this point. So, I I don't know how to speak when the microphone has to go back and forth. It's difficult. I mean, maybe it's just splashing a little paint on a canvas, or I don't know. I'm struggling just like you, but I'm hopeful listening to a little bit about how you got. I mean, so you got 4 months. Sounds like out of your bubble of hope. Uh, with your, I got 3 months out of my summer of. I mean, is that what life is? There's a spider that we used to, that lives underwater, and like once a day it goes up to the top and it gets a little bubble of air and then goes back down. We used to use this as a example in evangelism,
Mm.
but that because you should go to church. That was what church was for.
Oh,
You're going up
oh.
once a week to get your. But is that really the model of? I mean, I see a lot of hopeful things out there too. Uh, Small things though, and I'd like to see more. I mean, I'm encouraged when I hear what Dan talks about, but yeah, it seems to be very. Maybe it's never going to be anything more than that. A few moments, and you know. Hmm. Hmm. Mm-hmm. 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 Yes, I'm okay. I'm gonna run out to my car and get.
Um, let's get back to the summer of fundamentalism.
No, I want to talk
Are
about
we
Vikings. Don't
depression?
forget Vikings.
Okay, but we're at an hour and we gotta get
Oh,
to
are
the
we
we.
under a deadline?
No, not really, but you know,
Okay.
I'm getting sleepy. It's almost my bedtime. Um, you killed a dog on the altar of your religion. Then what happened?
Well, you mean that day, or just in general? How did the summer of fundamentalism unfold?
Yeah, from there.
More and more, I met a second discrete problem came up. I used to go down and witness and evangelize the sex workers down there, the hoes as we used to call them. And one of their pimps came up to me, and he actually knew way more about the Bible than I did. And so we started engaging about the Bible, and he started, because I had read through the Bible, and as a Roman Catholic, I didn't know anything about the Bible generally. Uh, and he started explaining to me how the Bible came into existence. And this really kind of shook me a bit, because I hadn't really thought much. I just thought, well, it's the Bible. You don't ask questions about the Bible. It just kind of fell out of the sky, and I'm just going to learn this. And it's like a magical thing. You master it, you wield it, you know. And he kind of disrupted that notion, and so he's the one that got me, critical theological thinking. I mean, that was a big pillar because having something, I mean, we were looking for something solid to put your faith on. The government's collapsing, and we were already had ecological movements. Was living in Cleveland when the river started on fire. So all of that kind of stuff was still going on. Uh, now this thing that I put all this hope in for like 6 weeks, that was getting undermined and questioned. So, and just then pretty soon every day, more and more, bad leadership, bad decisions. These big evangelists, I mean, I'd be going around with these evangelistic team. Now people were marketing, Jim Polisari. You could sort of look these things up on the internet. So there's these big tent things going around and big collections, and the message is starting to get a little more standardized. And a lot of that, I think there was a lot of real spontaneous, uh, as he was saying, uh, grassroots spirituality, coming up, uh, that very quickly was getting co-opted, challenged. Maybe it could have moved into fruitful areas had it been in some other, I mean, maybe if we'd have been in Big Sur, California, or I don't know, but very quickly, you know, we could talk about things like being born again and how your whole life is going to change, and but really culture, psychology, these things are very, very powerful. We don't just throw these things off very easy. And I started seeing things in myself as well. I thought all my desires for drugs and all this stuff was supposed to disappear. You know, and it didn't. So I had to start. I started doing serious questioning. But right around this time, I met Linda, and I was a pretty good evangelist. So I was bringing lots of people. I was filling up future militia camps for Jesus. Uh, so, and Linda was one of my converts, and so that made that kind of pump, and she was a very naturally. I was not a naturally spiritual. I'm not a spiritual person. I don't think about it that way. That's a odd word we'd have to talk about a little bit more. But she was. She was a very much nature-based, spiritual-based, paganistic, in the best sense of the word, kind of person. And so naturally, when the hippie movement came, she was raised in a absolute leave it to beaver, wonderful household, mom and dad, but she chafed against all that, got out immediately, and was immediately attracted to the counterculture, the hippie movement, the peace movement, which turned very negative and bad and was not good for her, was very destructive and very anti-woman and all this kind of thing. Anyway, she runs into me, and I talk to her about Jesus and getting, how her whole life can change, and she very quickly agreed and became a convert, and we fell in together and fell in love very quickly. In 3 days we were engaged to be married, and so that kind of shifted. I guess it made me want to stick around this, since she was a new born again Christian. I didn't feel like, well, maybe I shouldn't all of a sudden be bringing up all my doubts and stuff. So that kind of kept me going for another few weeks. But little by little, I just couldn't sustain, what I would have earlier called faith. There was just too many questions, and nobody could answer them. Nobody wants to talk about those things. Why are you asking these kind of things? Let's get on board. And Linda never. I was living in a communal house, but Linda wasn't. She was living with a friend. So I started kind of staying over there more and more. And it wasn't like one day I just woke up and said, I'm out of here. I just sort of gently, and we kind of there was another little counter community of people who were also having problems, asking questions. And so we kind of formed a counter group, kind of like, there was the Pope and there was the anti-Pope. We were like the anti-Popes. We were over here. So you could ask the questions over here that we couldn't over there. And we drink beer. It reminded me a lot of these main church people that we met online on those blogs. They were fundamentalists, then they became Episcopalians and started drinking beer and smoking pipes, and it all just seemed so radical and great. So we were a little counter group over here, so we would smoke cigarettes and drink beer and talk about the Bible, and this was just, the other Christians. Now, we were written off then. They would come over and denounce us, public denunciations on the street. Not that I cared much. Linda didn't care for institutions, and she didn't, so we just moved on, and that's, and to begin the struggle of the rest of our lives. So that's how the summer of, I don't know that I'll have to think if there was a big decisive break. I know that Joe Peterson, who's a Facebook friend, he became the leader right after I left. And we talk about these things a lot. And I was asking him, there was one time he was denouncing me on the streets of Yakima Avenue. I mean, this all seems funny now. He's like I'm 68. He's like 74 or so, But, he was denouncing me on the streets, waving his Bible at me and denouncing me because I had a girlfriend in another town, and she ended up pregnant. And they had made the assumption that I was the one who had fathered the child. And they did this public denunciation of me, and they were condemning me on the streets, I mean, now it just seems so ludicrous, but then, we were all taking this kind of stuff pretty serious. So that was about the time I was making the break as well. Things were kind of changing. And I do want to say to Joe, just on some sheer chance he should see this, he
will never see this.
He was a very good, if you're going to have a cult leader, I mean, I've said this exactly to him, he was very good at this. And even to this day, at the last meeting, like 2 or 3 years ago, I still ask, has there ever been a single incidence of child abuse report. I mean, we had literally hundreds of people going in and out of these communal houses, and they still have never heard an accusation of that, which is really quite remarkable. Or other kinds of sexual assaults or something. So whatever else bad things we had going on, I'd like to think maybe we escaped one of the worst. So there were a lot of good things about that time too. So I wouldn't want to put it on a negative. And I'm still friends with folks that have went a variety of, some have become ardent right-wing conservatives. Some have, many have just gone on to that was an interesting couple of months in my life and they've never thought about it again. And others have, kept up a fervent faith for many years. So I've kept friends across the spectrum and plan on continuing to do so. And I'm still looking for that next bus to come by. So I may not be too old to jump on the next
but not a literal bus.
Well, no, a metaphorical bus of, the next, but and maybe that bus will take me to India. I keep thinking about going to India. I would love to make a trip there.
You want to go be like Mr. Bald Wilbur guy?
No, rather than going with Ken Wilbur, me and David Bentley Hart will go to India together and explore the.
Okay, Dan. Oh, what does Dan O think about Ken Wilbur? Oh, I don't either. I know he's bald and he's like kind of like a levels of consciousness kind of thing. Let's not get into that. We'll talk about.
Tell him to Wikipedia him after the show.
Okay, let's talk about Viking.
Let me say this: Ken Wilbur would have been one of those buses and if you ever see one of the pictures of him when he's young, the first impression I ever had of him, that's a cult leader you want to watch out for. I mean, he was bald. He had this like white flowing shirt, sitting cross-legged on a thing. If you're sitting cross-legged, that's already a sign. This could be some cultish activity going on. So, and just the way he talked, he was very striking physically. And it was a few years later that I started engaging a little bit with his work. I don't know that I would recommend it. I find some of it useful. I wouldn't. I'd be recommending other things before I'd recommend either him or David Bentley Hart. I'd be recommending the works of Daniel Oudshoorn, folks, and his upcoming book, the new Politics of Jesus, because we can't read the old one anymore. So,
hey Dan, what shirt do you have on today?
Yeah, we can't really read that.
Yeah, it's printed on black with black. It does. Oh, they're old. Okay. I wanted it. Oh, cause you.
I just want to say that I wore this over the weekend. I was not camping, but I went over to Eastern Washington in preparation for camping. Eastern Washington here, that's militia country, serious militia country. And I thought, should I wear this shirt over there? How many people are going to know BLM is Black Lives Matter? Anyway, I went for it. I did get some looks and some negative response. It's because they thought it's the Bureau of Land Management, who they dislike even more than black people, as it turns out. Yeah, so this, I would have ended up being murdered and would have been for the entire wrong cause. I don't know how that would have affected my martyrdom at the Catholic Church, but anyway, the canon lawyers would have had to work that all out. But
I wanted to find a point of disagreement that we could talk about for a second, and I think I know what it is.
That's where the market is.
Well, and I'm just curious because I think you and we're kind of Jesus freaks, right? And it's kind of like a non-violent thing, right? You defeat the evil with love and non-violence.
Well, I'm maybe a little more complex than that.
You're more violent than I am.
I don't know if I'd want to put it in that term. I wouldn't want to start out the conversation by, okay, on the violence meter, where should we, can you chop their legs off? I just don't, I'm not sure that that's the way I would approach it. Try to come up with some sort of standard to, rather than more of a situational, what's the entire situation here? What might be the best response here? So that's more, and how would Jesus inform that response?
Right, but I'm talking like, my views have really changed a lot over the years. I was like radical, like if somebody broke into my house and was, killing my children, I would just let them do it. That's like the Jesus thing. I can't do that anymore. I mean, that because then my views have been like, well, Jesus is not telling the poor people what to do. He's talking about the powerful and the rich, and he's something like that, right? But I think that Dan O is he's like he's not about this nonviolent stuff, right? But I've seen some of your Facebook posts, and they sound like I don't know what target they're like, who they're targeting, but
He sounds like he's worried, like the Canadian Secret Service is listening to this, and he's afraid of getting, you know,
right.
he's probably got a whole bomb making thing going on in the back. You know, yeah, that's one thing, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So because like, am I looking out at the world and I'm trying to see it through the lens of like a Jesus lens? The empire is just destroying everything, and it's got its boot on our heads. And do we fight back? Like, do we fight the empire with violence, like Molotov cocktails, or do we? Is it? My interpretation is Jesus let the empire kill him, and that was the victory over the powers of evil, right? Is that and then but in looking at the scriptures as a polemic for the poor, does that really work? What do you think, Dano? Yeah. Okay, so enlighten us.
Or we could say one of the alternatives. I know you don't like Cousins Keys, but that's what the last temptation of Christ is like. Creates an alternative possibility for Jesus, another life, a comfortable rabbi, followers, married to Mary Magdalene. You know, that's what Jesus could. You know, he could have been Gamaliel in a sense, or something like that. You know, that was. You know,
I like that analogy. Yeah, and is it true? Is it true? Like I've heard it say, and it's like Jesus is. There's been a lot of rebellions from the Jewish community back in there. Was the Bar Kokhba revolt later on, and all this stuff. And I think is it not? It's like Jesus is saying there's a warning here, right? We're what are they? They're Rome came and is occupying their state, and how do we survive in this condition? And he's saying, well, these other rebellions have done all these things. They've tried to fight the empire with violence, but we're not going to do that. We're going to do it this other way, and it's kind of a more, they're overturning tables and they're doing it polemically and things like this.
May I just may I just say that this may have been Ched Myers popped by the other day, and this may have some influence from Ched. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah,
But,
certainly. I'm a
because I think he kind of wrote.
Ched Myers acolyte.
Yeah. Well, it could be both. It could be both things. I don't see why one forecloses the option of the other. I mean, your actions should probably flow from something, a deep consideration, thinking, whatever. Hmm. Well, you'd have to have some understanding of what's liberating and life giving. So you're already making decisions ahead of time because you are. Hmm, 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 hmm. But that wouldn't keep you from making a suitcase bomb and slipping it under Hitler's table. I mean, so. Hmm, 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 Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's complex, and you know. Mm-hmm. Mm. 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 Mm-hmm. Mm.
So you kind of want to be more nuanced with the word violence, like maybe you know it's too
Pigs, roofs, and what was the other one?
like the temple, like go and overthrow.
Pigs, roofs, and tables. That's
Is that a
that's
thing that you just made up?
yeah, that's good.
But like,
Jesus is get down with that.
yeah, like the Jesus thing would be, you know,
What about a Patriot missile? Would that? It's got the right name, and would that be?
yeah, right. That
I mean, because I mean, well, I want to mention that if we're talking about the summer of fundamentalism, so a lot of us that were hippies, we were already in a counterculture movement and an anti-war posture. Not that we'd thought it all through, would have described ourselves as pacifists at that point. We weren't sophisticated enough. Some people were, I wasn't. Uh, so falling into Christianity, you would think that, well, that would should just flow right in, right? I mean, if you become a Christian, should you then start supporting the war of against the Vietnamese? You know what I mean? And that's what happened very quickly as this movement got co-opted. You would have thought, well, that other stuff should have hung on more, but little by little it got eroded. And by the time Reagan came along, he brilliantly co-opted the whole movement. I mean, he took over evangelical Christianity, lock, stock, and barrel. I mean, he fundamentally changed the faith in ways you wouldn't even recognize it from 10 years earlier. The kind of things that would have been talked about in church on Sunday, the kind of, there were a lot of amazing people. It was a lot of wonderful things that used to happen in Pentecostalism and some of these churches, things that you never hear. I mean, they were stuff that kind of mirrors. what you see in a lot of what they call Eastern religions. You don't hear people going to church talking about dying to themselves and this sort of thing, do you, these days?
Yes.
In Pentecostal churches, this was very common. There was an ethics about self-denial. It wasn't all this consumerism or prosperity. That wasn't a part of it at all. I mean, I don't remember hearing any of that kind of thing. But these are a lot of working class people, poor people. I don't know. It seemed there was just more realism. But maybe when Reagan came along and offered a whole another fantasy show that was just more pleasant, and maybe we're done with all that. Let's dig out our sins and keep journals about how we can be better and dying to our stuff, and let's start partying down and gaining capital. And now you'd go to church now, and there's programs on how to invest in the stock market, and I mean the whole thing was it was just down the tubes at that point. So
Anything else to say about? Oh, go ahead, Dan. I can't wait to write the title for this episode: Christian violence or something.
well, I will say I think it might be a little more. It might be a little more complex, maybe, than even that, because I remember around the time. So there was a pretty big contingent that went into opposition to Reaganism and to the wars and even going down and participating and working in the wars in Latin America. Uh, and those of us that were doing that, we weren't preaching pacifism. We were lending support. We were maybe lending physical support, and also we were there to be learning things like different kinds of liberation theologies. So I didn't notice a lot of people trying to impose, showing up with, books of Yoder on their under their arms, trying to turn Latin American revolutionaries into pacifists. So I don't know what Ched was doing back then, but yeah, yeah. So you had evangelical American Christianity battling, you know, Roman Catholic liberation theology as practiced that's kind of an interesting way to look at it. And let me just throw one little sideline in there. In this worldwide battle that was shaping up, there was one particular group that had a worldwide satellite network. And who was that?
TBN.
It was Jim Baker.
I love Jim Baker.
And that's why that's part of what went on with the whole demise of Jim Baker was Jim Baker wasn't particularly political back then. If you know Jim and Tammy, and I have a lot of respect for Tammy Baker. I think she's a fascinating person. Uh, they wanted that satellite. That satellite network helped get Reagan elected, and it also helped propagandize Latin America for capitalist Jesus and this sort of thing. So the politics of that haven't really been explored that much. I hope somebody will write a book about that sometime. When who was the guy that was reading the Moral Majority back then? His son just got kicked out of Liberty University. Falwell. Falwell was a shrewd political guy, and he was already in cahoots with Reagan, and they'd kind of said, okay, well, we're going to give you some power, but we want that satellite network. When Jim Baker took his fall, he took over. He swooped in to the PTL club, said, I'm going to take over, and he took over the satellite network and then gave that network to the Reagans to use for his campaign and stuff. kind of an interesting sideline. That's all. Another interesting sideline to the Vietnam War. Roman Catholic Church was very much on the side of, on both sides. And on one side, they were arming, there was a lot of Catholic converts. And so when they were building up these strategic hamlets, if they were Catholic hamlets, they would give them arms, supplies to fight off the Viet Cong or whatever. But if they weren't Roman Catholic, they would let them, they would just let them be destroyed either by the U.S. in bombing raids or by the North. So the Catholic Church was very much involved in the war in Vietnam in a negative way. There were positive ways too. I mean, they were demonstrating against, and the Berrigans and big Catholic peace movements. At the same time, the institutional church was propping up the American military machine there by instrumentalizing American power in these Catholic hamlets. So just a side historical note. Out of the past, that's why you have an old man here to bring up these obscure points that nobody knows about or cares about.
You wanted to ask him about Vikings.
Yeah, so I found this. So I started watching this show. Speaking of violence, and it kind of at some point the Vikings. Now I don't know anything about any sort of Viking history. All I know is what's from TV, right? Which is like negative understanding, But they go. I can't. I'm trying to understand their economy in terms of David Graeber's book on debt. Because like they get in a boat, they sail over to England, they steal the gold and crosses, they sail back to Norway, and so in the first episode, the king goes out and he buries all the gold for the future, his afterlife. I don't understand how this is a functioning economy. I'm not sure. I'm hoping Dan can explain. What are you doing with this? So yeah, I've got a golden comb. I'm sitting in a hut in Norway with a gold. It's not like there's a 7-Eleven or a Home Depot I can go buy anything with. I think they should have read David Graeber's book before they, I think they should have understand a little bit more about economy and older economies. But maybe you have some light on this kind of. I'm very interested in Viking religion as well. So if you've watched any of it, I think you know something about that. Is this show? I mean, is it just completely ridiculous, or do you think there's anything there that's kind of resonant with what might have actually went on back in the day? I mean, you're didn't you read? I think you read all those long Viking stories, right? And okay, well, yeah. Well, when I'm done with the series, I'll be writing a small treatise on Viking economics and David Graeber's bullshit jobs. Is being a Viking a bullshit job? That's what I'm trying to. If you've read that or saw the video,
Well, isn't it more like Vikings about like glory and wealth and stuff more than like I'm gonna go buy a bunch of boats or something?
you mean according to the one TV series I've watched, and also I watched the 1956 Vikings with Kirk Douglas. So based on that, it seems like it's almost more like junior high school kids on weekend in Fort Lauderdale with axes, shields, and you know, and just I can't believe this is actual history. But they're just stealing everything, killing it, murdering everybody, and getting back in their boats and going back to north. Now, at some point, they want to start colonizing. That's what's kind of interesting. They capture a monk. This guy is what kind of got me interested in the show. He goes back to Norway, and now he's denouncing them all as heathens, but he's becoming little by little more enthralled with their religion, and he kind of converts, and then he becomes a full-blooded Viking, and he goes back to England to whack the other Christians. He gets back to England. He gets to whack. He does do some serious whacking and pillaging, no raping that I know of, and then he gets captured. They find out they crucify him. The king saves him, and he converts back to Christianity after having a vision of the Virgin Mary. That's a pretty interesting course of events.
Spoiler alert.
And I'm not going to. I haven't finished it. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I find that kind of interesting. I wish I knew more about actual, Viking history and religion, and I mean that's a big subject, away from Denmark to, and I don't. I thought Dan could inform me, but apparently, he's let us down on that. So,
Well, sounds like you have a book to write. Go ahead, Dan.
mm-hmm. Hmm. Well, what sort of tattoos should we be looking for if it should if one wanted to identify which witches were into white supremacy and which ones weren't? This is the kind of content that live streamers, can really capitalize on right here.
Yeah, I think this video is definitely gonna get flagged.
Hmm. Do you think that counts? This show's very popular. Do you think it's popular amongst white supremacists? Is it just because there's a bunch of white people and there's no? I mean, I thought there was one. Yeah, I mean, in the show, there's really no minorities, or it's all white people battling, being courageous. So, is this a popular show among the alt right? You think? Hmm. Mm-hmm. 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 Hmm. Hmm. So was it? Maybe this was a backlash against Wakanda, or what? What was that movie with the Black Panther? So you had the Black Panther, and then like, whoa, we better, something needs to represent the white race. Let's get Vikings and Thor and Odin back in here to shore that up. Jesus, he's a little sketchy. We're not sure what he's a little. He may not be able to hold that white standard up as much as we like. Huh. Yeah. Well, thank you for that input on that.
So you're never gonna write this book.
Uh, you know, life is short, and I got a lot. My quest now is to create the perfect muffin. I make muffins for the oppressed and homeless, and I used to make burritos, but through the nanny state government, this is to attract libertarian audience. Through the nanny state government control, I could no longer make these very wonderful burritos that we were making because they had meat and cheese in them, and we didn't have the right regulations. The regulations, I can make a muffin. So I've been trying to come up with muffins with so much nutrition in them, and yet they have to be delicious, healthy, so people are going to eat them. I just don't want them thrown in the dumpster. And so far, I get a lot of positive response, but a lot of that's because people don't want to hurt your feelings. I'm not happy with my muffins. If you can come up with a recipe, I want them to. I'm making very healthy muffins. They're not as tasty as I would like. I want this to be a muffin. You're waking up in the morning in a homeless shelter. You're looking forward to that muffin in the morning, and it's sustaining. It's got so that's what I've been working on. It's a small thing. It's there's no manifesto with it. There's just a recipe, hopefully. Big, healthy, puffy. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, I appease that inner Nazi by watching the Vikings, and then I make muffins for the homeless to assuage my guilty conscience. So
Yeah, this video is getting flagged hard.
really,
Yeah, you can't say stuff like that. They
like what?
like the N word.
Oh, what if we
Don't
were
say
what?
it.
What were we on a show talking about World War II?
Yeah, it would be flagged.
Well, what do you call it then? The Z word, or I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Hmm.
But you gotta watch. Yeah, it's weird. YouTube looks out for that stuff. They have an algorithm that scans all the words, and if it like you say, like white supremacy or anything, and then they look at it and it's like three white guys talking in a trailer, we're in big trouble. All right. Well, thanks, Dan O, for coming on. I would love to see a book on like Jesus violence, like advocating for more violence.
Yeah, they're out there.
Are they?
There's some stuff out there, isn't there, Dan? I think it's rare, actually. I don't think I hardly know any Christians that I would call, absolute pacifists or anything. I don't know anybody like that, or even any groups. I mean, I don't know. What are the Mennonite? Is there some like official? I don't pay that much attention.
Chris Hedges, that's the name.
Oh, I have no idea. I know who he is, but I'm not that familiar with Chris's stuff. So, hmm. Well, I knew he was. I knew he was critical of military. I had no idea he was some kind of pacifist. I didn't even know he had. Oh God. Oh God. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That was sad.
What was that name? Graber?
Graver. Hmm. Yeah, but I mean, how many people are we talking? I mean, this has got to be a very small contingent of. Oh, really? Yeah. Well, we're out here in the trailer in the woods. We're not really know much what's going on out there in the rest of the world. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Well, we'll let Chris. These kinds of, you know, I mean, this just pops more small bubbles of. I remember reading a biography, and I can't remember the guy's name. He's a kind of a famous Jewish biography. They were fleeing from the Nazis. I think they were going from like Warsaw to Krakow, just ahead of the Wehrmacht and the Wehrmacht. And so the whole big group of refugees, they get to this town. They're safe for the night, and they're no sooner safe for the night than they're within a day or two, they'd come up with four different little newspapers, like the Radical Democratic Socialists, no, the Socialists for Democratic Change, no, the Radical Communist Socialists of the New Order of Judaism, and they were all fighting with one another, and then the Nazis are like 10 miles away and they're fighting, and then they pack this all up and get to the next town. And the Nazi, and then finally the Nazis catch up with them and wipe them all out. I mean, I always kind of admired that, but that's what this kind of seems like sometimes here. We get these little issues and we just, so rather than trying to purify an issue down to something that I can impose on everybody else, I guess I'm more interested in, what does this situation call for now, and listening, trying to listen to more the situation rather than having this fully formed manifesto I can walk around and just plop it on top of whatever situation that comes across. Now that's probably just kind of weaseling out of not making a commitment towards, as Clancy keeps always saying, quoting the Berrigans, figure out where you stand and stand there, and that's not something I'm always that good at. I'm kind of, on the one hand this and the other hand that kind of a guy. I don't think that's always that good. So
That's juicy.
any criticism you want to offer, I'm probably guilty of. So
Well, no. Besides your muffins.
yeah, I'm working on those muffins. I'm just going to change the world one muffin at a time. I feel good about making muffins, and I was out of town yesterday. I was going to bring muffins yesterday, and I forgot. So, I mean, I was out of town, so I just got back. But cabin in the woods. I'm thinking about. I'm wondering if I can spend a year alone in a cabin up in the mountains. I don't know. I was up hiking part of the Pacific Crest Trail yesterday and today, and
You and Ellie?
me and Ellie, and so I mean, it sounds, it's one of those things, the cabin in the woods. Finish up the novel, The Summer of Fun, but that's not going to happen. So
Well, the muffins, changing the world one muffin at a time.
I'm just now it's all about the muffins. So, and the name coming soon. We do have a little bit of a group here that's forming, and we're meeting this Sunday. Are you going, by the way?
I don't. Is it a Facebook group?
Yes, that name coming soon group. I thought you were part of that group.
I am, but you're meeting in real life.
We're meeting in real life at Lydia's house out in the woods.
Oh. Wait, who's Lydia?
Lydia and Brett.
We'll talk about this off air. This is boring. All right. Thanks for coming on, Dan. I love having you. I love all the nuance and just the radicalness of your thing. It's awesome, and I love getting it out there. It's awesome. Thanks for coming into the creepy hut too, Dan.
So how often do you do this? And is this like a regular?
Do what?
This live streaming.
I do it every week.
I'm new to this. The only streaming, like in the last 6 months, this whole movement of live streaming, where basically it seems like in the future we're all just going to live stream to like 2 other people, and that's. But I do it playing chess around the chess community. I watch chess streamers all the time. I didn't even call them that. I mean, I just thought, oh, these are guys that are playing and explaining chess. But so I do understand. I'm beginning to get an understanding of how streaming is operating in this culture. That interests me, as I was part of this chess culture. But now I'm, then I got invited to come over and actually talk on this one. So it's interesting. I'm gonna have to do some thinking about it.
It's complicated. We'll get you going on a chess stream. That would be dope. Streaming chess with Dan.
Oh, I'd love to. Where does he play? Oh, you're kidding. So I'm Rosenzweig. How long has he learned? I mean, how long? Oh, but yeah, boy, they pick it up. So what I'm trying to do. So what I'm trying to do, what I'm failing at is what's called chess hyperbullet. So I generally play blitz chess and speed chess, like 5-minute games and 3-minute games, but the pace keeps picking up faster and faster. So then we started playing bullet games, which are 1-minute games, but now I'm down to 7-second games. And the pieces are moving so fast. I realize I cannot. My mind, part of its old age, I can't do it. I cannot play anything faster than a 30-second game. So, but he'll be getting into that sort of stuff. I'll send you a link to a streamers that I watch. They're called the Botez sisters. Your son will enjoy them. They also, I just watched a video of them playing in Washington Square Park, where I used to play in Manhattan. But anyway, why don't you learn how to play? It's pretty interesting kind of game. And then I can play your son. You can send me some unrated games. Oh, what's his name on chess.com? Okay, just send me a text. But remember, I named myself after Franz Rosenzweig, if you know the Star of Redemption. So that's my handle, and he can find me. I'm probably the only one, and I don't think there's a capital. It's so so if he I love you too. I miss you. Any chance of you coming this summer or this fall or anything like that? Hmm. Oh, we're all over it down here. It's all gone. Yeah. Oh, really?
No, it's over though. I mean, that's all the restrictions.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, yeah. So we're maybe just like 6 weeks ahead of you, or something, because restaurants have opened up, and you know, at least here on the island, it almost seems like there's nothing going on. But see, I was driving through Seattle, Eastern Washington, very few mask wearers. They weren't wearing masks during the pandemic anyway. I'd go over to Eastern Washington, there was no mask wearing over there. So, uh, yeah, well, if there's a chance, my daughter has moved to Indiana. One of my daughters, sadly, and so if I ever get back that far, then I'm going to go see you and see anybody else in that area. If I and I'm going to continue and try to make a trip out of it. The hitch is I have this wonderful dog, Ellie, which I don't want to leave. So I do have somebody that'll watch her for me. Clancy is her godfather, and he will watch her.
Okay, let me end the stream and then we'll talk
Oh,
about your dog.